episode of Let's Talk 716 Sports. My special guest is Howard Simon, and we will be talking some New York baseball and some Bills football. How's your afternoon so far?
It's good. This is the high point of my afternoon, having the podcast with you. I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Why did you choose the Mets over the Yankees?
It probably doesn't seem like a good choice right now, I guess is what you're telling me. It was handed down to me, okay? So I grew up, I have two older brothers, there's three of us. My parents they're from Brooklyn. So they grew up Brooklyn Dodgers fans. Now, if you remember, well, I don't know if you remember this, you wouldn't. But anyway, when they were rooting for the Brooklyn Dodgers, the Dodgers would always get to the World Series and lose to the New York Yankees. So they did not like the New York Yankees. So between that, and then my dad ends up doing some work with the New York Mets, those two factors, those are the main factors. So my dad was a Mets fan. And so his three sons, myself included, we became fans of the New York Mets. We did not like the Yankees in our house growing up, Robby, because the Yankees were always beating the Brooklyn Dodgers. So we were not fans of the New York Yankees growing up.
What was it like growing up in New York?
It was interesting. I grew up on Long Island, and it was pretty cool back then because when I first started becoming a big sports fan, it was the early 1970s. So the Mets were actually, by Mets standards, they were good. I mean, they won the World Series in 1969. They made the World Series in 73. The Rangers had good teams. The New York Knicks, who are one of the worst franchises now, they were really good. They won 2 titles. The Jets had won Super Bowl III, but that was before I was really getting into sports. So in that time, the teams that we rooted for in our house growing up were all really good. And what was cool about it was because you had, all these teams in all the major sports, we could go to all the games. My dad ended up working not only with Mets games, but with Knicks and Rangers games. So we were always getting tickets to Shea Stadium to see the Mets, and we were always getting tickets from Madison Square Garden. So I grew up going to Mets, Knicks, and Rangers games, which is a pretty cool experience.
Who is your favorite Mets player?
Oh, it's not even close. Hang on, I got to get you something. Hold on. So I got a couple things here. Okay. It's Tom Seaver, pitcher from the 60s and 70s. So this is a replica of the statue that they unveiled earlier this season at Citi Field. And this, you won't be able to tell it because I don't think you can read it. But anyway, this is an autographed baseball from Tom Seaver that I don't even remember who got it for me, Robby, but somebody got it for me. So he is, no matter what sport, that's my all-time favorite player. That's like the first player that I absolutely just fell in love with. Always loved watching him pitch. Always thought, if we got tickets to Shea Stadium and Seaver was pitching, that was like the greatest thing in the world for a kid.
Lee, what did you think of the wild card game?
You sure we have to talk about that? Because if you want to skip that, I have no problem. Not okay. Yeah, it was tough. I was kind of hoping they were going to win. I'm not shocked if anybody out there is a Mets fan, and if you've been a Mets fan as long as I have. Well, you don't even have to be a Mets fan as long as I have. Even if you've been a Mets fan for like 10, 20 years, you know that normally the season doesn't go the way you want it to go. And a lot of times the Mets will end up disappointing you. So I wasn't surprised. I didn't think they were playing that well, quite honestly, the last month of the season. So I'm not shocked they lost to the Padres. And so, yeah, I guess I'm not stunned, but it's disappointing because the way things were going, I thought for sure they were going to win their division. They wouldn't have to play in the wild card. And then, probably I was hoping you'd, get a shot at the Dodgers in the championship series, but it just didn't work out. That's the way it goes, Robby. That's life as a Mets fan. Sometimes they can really make you crazy.
Did you catch any of the Yankees Guardians game?
No, because here's how I always feel about these things. Um, when the Mets season is done, typically I'm done with my baseball season because I'm not over the years that it's weird. When I grew up, I was a huge baseball fan. I would watch any baseball that was on television, collected cards, the usual stories. As I've gotten older, I've become a Mets fan. I'm not a baseball fan. I do not watch anybody other than the Mets. So when the Mets season is done, they don't make the playoffs, or if they do make the playoffs, whenever they're eliminated, whenever the Mets season is done, I really don't watch baseball. And because, this one kind of stung a little bit, them losing to the Padres right now, I have no desire to watch baseball. And on top of that, there's a lot of stuff going on. We've got the Bills, we got the football season going on, we got the Sabres about to start. Saturdays are college football days. So I'm probably not going to see much, if at all, of the remaining baseball playoff games.
What do you think of the Sabres so far?
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I really am. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, Robby, but I think I think everybody feels, for what, 11 years now in this playoff drought, most of it you've probably hoped, crossed your fingers, and it just never worked out, and they had the wrong coach or the wrong GM, or they got the wrong players. And it really hasn't been a true feeling that the franchise was headed in the right direction. I think finally, knock on wood, Sabre fans feel that they have the right GM and front office in place. They have the right coach in place. They've put together a good roster with some good young players. It looks like they have other young prospects scattered, throughout inside the organization in the pipeline that are going to help in the next couple, 3 years, we hope. So I think there's a lot to feel good about the Sabres. Now, I don't think they're making the playoffs because they'd have to make a really big jump in terms of points from where they were last year. But I think they'll be better. I think they'll be competitive. They play an entertaining style of hockey. And there are a lot of guys on this team that I think fans either like now or will come to like as we see them play a little bit more this season.
What did you think of the extension for Matthias Samuelsson?
I was surprised by that. Not that he's not a good player. Like for years, like our beat reporter, Paul Hamilton, whenever we have him on, or if we talk to Kevin Adams or Don Granato, like they love Samuelsson. And I was impressed when he first came up here and he started playing. He looked mature beyond his years. He's very solid in his own end. His length, I think, is really important as a defenseman. He'll play physical. He's got the bloodlines going because his dad was an NHL player. But so there's a lot to like about his game. But I didn't see, I was surprised they gave him a 7-year extension. Having said that, I think he's paired really well with Dahlin last season. I think they look at Dahlin, Power, and Samuelsson as the core 3 guys in this group of defensemen going forward. So I think they're identifying, Thompson got his contract. I think they're identifying the young guys they see in their core going forward that they want to keep together for a long time. And Samuelsson was on the list. I was just surprised he got a 7-year deal with such a small NHL resume, but I know they love him and he's looked really good. And if he turns out to be the player we think he will be, $4 million a year is going to be a bargain for a top 4 NHL defenseman.
What did you think of when the coach Granato got his extension?
Yeah, it's good too. I mean, I think, this kind of goes back to how I think, I was saying a moment ago, I think people feel good about the direction of the franchise. And I think they finally believe they've got people who are good at their jobs in place. And that includes Don Granato. I think since he took over from Ralph Kruger, I've got nothing but good things to say about him for a number of reasons. One, I like his philosophical approach to hockey. It's about attacking. It's about going north-south. It's about being in the offensive end. It's not about preaching, a shutdown defense or the trap or this or that. Let's have the puck. Let's always be on offense. Let's be trying to score goals. And if we're doing that all the time, we don't have to worry about defense as much. So I think it's a really good philosophy. I think he has his teams play an entertaining brand of hockey. And that's really important. Look, we all want him to win. We want him to make the playoffs. If you're not good enough to make the playoffs, at least entertain me. The Sabres were bad for too long, and they were boring for too long. This team is a little more entertaining to watch. Plus, I think his track record, since they were going through a build, rebuild, whatever you want to call it, they need a coaching staff to develop young players. Obviously, they were turning over the organization. And again, from the moment he stepped in, like Dahlin's game was suffering under Kruger, and Dahlin looks like a different player now. But you want to bring up Cousins, Thompson's breakthrough season. I think it'll happen with Middlestat. He's just got to stay healthy. The rebirth of Jeff Skinner, if you want to go with an older player, you could find a number of players on this roster who are better, or young guys that are now developing with Granato and his coaching staff. So not only do they play a good style, but obviously they've shown a track record of getting players and making them better. And with this young team, it's still the youngest team in terms of average age on the roster. That's super important. So I'm not surprised they extended him. And I think the Pagulas are very happy with the people running their hockey team right now.
Like, where could my viewers or listeners listen to your takes on sports?
Oh, you sure they want to do that? I mean, there's music out there, Robby. I think I'd be more entertained listening to music than my takes on sports. They can still catch me the old-fashioned way on the radio on WGR. My work schedule's changed. I'm not working as much as I used to, so I'm on Monday, Tuesday, and Friday with Jeremy White, and we've been together next month. It'll be 18 years we've been working together, and Joe DiBiase's on that show. So they can catch me listening to the radio. They can download the Odyssey app, listen to us on the app. So those are easy ways. If for some reason they want to listen to my takes and it won't make them nuts, then go ahead and listen. And if not, like I said, there's always music to listen to.
What is your record prediction for the Bills?
I'm trying to think. We just did that this week. I think it was like 15-2, which is probably a little too optimistic because stuff happens, right? Injuries are going to happen. Things are going to happen down the road. So, if you want to factor in some injuries and things that might happen, I mean, I think they're really good. Like, their offense is still extremely good. Their quarterback is fantastic. Their defense looks, better than last season, I think, when it was statistically number one, but I think it's a better defense because of the level of talent they have on that side of the ball. I think they're really good, Robby. I mean, it would be hard, but I mean, of course, barring an injury to the quarterback. And quite honestly, I've never seen a rash of injuries like the Bills saw in the first month of the season, and they're still 4-1. It'd be really hard for me to see this team losing more than like 3-4 games at the most. Maybe 15-2 is a little too optimistic. I don't know how they go, no worse than like 13-4. They're that good. I do believe we'll see what happens in Kansas City Sunday, right? But I do think they have the best overall talented, deepest roster in the National Football League.
What team or teams do you think are the hardest for the Bills this season?
Well, the team they're playing Sunday is still at the top of the list, right? Kansas City. And because I think it's kind of interesting, when the schedule came out, the schedule and how people were seeing what was going on this offseason in the AFC, and we started thinking, wow, this is going to be really hard. But, you look at some of the teams, the Bengals are not playing as well as some people thought they would coming off their Super Bowl run. Let's just talk about the AFC. The Chargers are going through some, Chargers stuff. They can be a really enigmatic team at times. Plus, they've got some key injuries. Denver was getting all that hype, and they look awful. Some people were talking up the Raiders. They're kind of struggling to get to 500. The Steelers are garbage. I think Baltimore's still pretty good. I think this is a long way of getting to, and I think Miami's good too. But best teams in the conference, I think, are the Bills and the Chiefs, or the Chiefs and the Bills, whichever way you want to look at it. I would say Bills, Chiefs, and there's nobody else in the same tier with those guys. After that, I would probably guess Baltimore as the third best team in the conference, and I still do like the Chargers when they're healthy. But I don't think there's any question as it has shaken out over the first 5 games of the season. It's the Bills in Kansas City. This is exactly where we were last season with the AFC.
Who is your early prediction to make the Super Bowl?
I like the Bills, no matter what happens on Sunday, although, beating Kansas City, and if they were able to get the 1 seed, I think that would make people feel a lot better about their chances because they haven't won a road playoff game yet in the McDermott era. I like the Bills to get there. The NFC, the NFCs that's hard to get a handle on. I couldn't even tell you right now. I would have said Green Bay maybe before the season, but they don't look good without Devontae Adams. The Rams don't know. I don't like anybody out of the NFC West to go to the Super Bowl. So I'm impressed that Dallas has won without Dak Prescott. If Tampa's healthy, I'll tell you what, if Tampa's healthy, give me the Bucs. I think the Bucs would be the best football team when they're not all banged up. So I'll say, oh, dear Lord, I don't think I could handle the Bills playing Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, but I'll say the Bills in Tampa Bay. How about that?
Do you have any questions for me?
Well, are the Bills going to make the Super Bowl? What do you think about their chances?
I think their defense and their offense look good. And I think they could play like the Bucs or maybe like maybe the Rams.
Yep. I forgot the Eagles. Maybe the Eagles. They're doing a lot better than I thought they were going to do. Would you like to see the Bills get Odell Beckham?
From free agency?
Yeah. Would you like
I
to see him
think
sign?
I think that would be a good signing for the Bills because of the injuries that we've had with the wide receivers.
Yeah, I agree. And he's a big playmaker, right? You never have enough of those. And like you said, at the very least, it is top level insurance against injuries, but it's also another great weapon. Imagine, if he signs here, imagine an opposing defense coming out and lining up against Diggs, Davis, and Beckham. It's pretty hard. I mean, I don't think there is a secondary in the league that can stop all 3 guys. So I hope he signs here too. I think that'd be a really nice addition. What about the Sabres? You asked me about the Sabres. What are you expecting to see from the Sabres this season?
I think like the Sabres could maybe like sneak into like a wild card position.
That'd be nice. Do you remember the last time the Sabres made the playoffs? It's been a little while, Robby. I'm not people might have forgotten what it was like.
Yeah, it was like in the Danny Briere, Chris Drury.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the last time they were super good and fun to watch and entertaining. And I don't know, maybe I know a lot of people talk about because they're owned by the same family, obviously the Pagulas. In your best case scenario, Sabre fans, you'd hope right now that basically Adams and Granato are there Bean and McDermott, okay? That they found the right people to run their hockey organization and that what they're doing, putting in, creating culture, cleaning out the roster. Remember when Bean and McDermott first got here? They got rid of Sammy Watkins and Marcel Darius and Ronald Darby. They moved out a lot of guys. So I guess, if you're a Sabre fan, you hope this is now happening with the hockey team, that they've moved out players they didn't want, the whole, get guys who want to be here stuff. They're trying to put in their culture. The Bills drafted and developed some really good young talent, right? Over the last, since 2017. So the Sabres are doing that now. So knock on wood, this all works. It has worked tremendously well for the football team. And again, if you're a Sabres fan, when you go to bed at night, if you're trying to think of happy thoughts, you know, maybe this is basically what we're seeing the Bills have done. Hopefully, we're now seeing the Sabres do that, and they will then get to the point where they start making the playoffs. And you mentioned the Briere-Drury era, right? We'd go into the season knowing the Sabres were a legitimate Stanley Cup contender. Hopefully, they're headed to that same, that same spot.
Do you think that our goaltending is good?
Yeah, that's a big that is the big question, right? So we'll see how. I think Eric Comrie is a good pickup, a nice bridge goaltender until they figure out who the guy is, whether it's Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen or Devin Levi, the kid at Northeastern, or even we still should include Portillo, the kid at Michigan. So it looks like they've got some good young prospect goalie options. Obviously, you don't want Craig Anderson playing that many games. He's 41 years old or whatever. So I think it'll be better than last season. I think Comrie is a nice pickup, and I think he should be able to shoulder the number one load. And then, hopefully UPL stays healthy, gets in some regular playing time in Rochester, and then whether it's this season or next season, he's back in the mix here. But yeah, I think it'll be better. How good? I don't know, but I would think it would be better than it was last season. It was a problem, and injuries too, but it was a problem at various points last season.
Do you have any other questions before I end the show?
I only have one other question, but I know you're not going to be able to answer it. When are my Mets ever going to win a World Series again?
Not not sure.
Yeah, well, me too. I thought you were going to say not anytime in the near future. That really would have made me feel better, Robby. Yeah, I'm not sure either. That's Bill's going to win the Super Bowl this year. Well, how about that?
I think they could like get to the Super Bowl, but I mean, I think they might win it like in a maybe this year or next year.
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope so too, because Lord knows everybody around here deserves a championship at some point, from the Bills, the Sabres, both. But everybody here deserves a nice big championship parade in downtown Buffalo for somebody at some point.
Yeah, and hopefully soon that they can like have a parade in Buffalo and like have people out there celebrating with the team.
Yeah, I think that'd be an amazing sight. I do. I think about what it would be like. Imagine, Robby, if the Bills win the Super Bowl this year, it's going to be nuts around here. I mean, that week, no one's going to work. Nothing's going to get done. It's going to be like a 24-hour party it's a nonstop party for the first week after the Super Bowl. People will be just celebrating like crazy. I envision like Bills fans who've moved away flying back here so they could be here for the parade, celebrations all over the place. I mean, it would be like, all these years of frustration over Bills and Sabres and everything would just be gone, and it would just come flying out. And man, I want to be here to see that, because that would be crazy. We would have a great time.
Yeah, that would be fun to be out there with like the Bills Mafia and stuff, like when they celebrate the championship.
Yep. Nobody jumping through tables. I don't want anybody getting hurt. Just have a good old fashioned party, and no jumping through tables. Okay.
Yeah, like at the tailgates, like where they
Yeah. They're jumping off like the top of vans and buses and everything through tables. I don't know. That always, I mean, I look at the videos typically, and part of me is laughing, and then part of me is like, man, that's got to be dangerous. I don't want to see anybody doing that anymore. It's funny, but man, that's crazy.
How do you think we'll do on Sunday?
I feel good about this game. I hope they're going to get, looks like they're going to, well, I shouldn't say it looks like, but hopefully Jordan Poyer will be back. That'll help. I'd like to see Dawson Knox back. That would help. So it looks like they're getting a little healthier. And I like the way the offense is playing. I watched a little bit of the Chiefs game Monday night against the Raiders, and the Raiders did a pretty good job against them. The Raiders coulda, woulda, shoulda won that football game. They were getting to Patrick Mahomes. They were getting some big plays against the Chiefs secondary. So I like the Bills' chances. I think it'll be maybe not as crazy as the finish of last year's game in the playoffs, but I think it'll be a high-scoring game again. I think the Bills' offense should win their matchup with Kansas City's defense. And let's face it, this is the game, or the opponent anyway, right? The Bills were thinking about when they retooled their defensive line, right? They got Von Miller, they got all these guys to help their pass rush. I think it does pay off Sunday against Patrick Mahomes. So I'll take the Bills to win.
Thank you for tuning in or listening to this episode of Let's Talk Someone Six Sports. Thank you to my special guest, Howard Simon, and go Mets and go Bills.
I'll take it. Thank you very much for having me, Robby. It was my pleasure coming on the show. We'll do this again sometime, and go Mets, go Bills, go Sabres.